Today I'm going to show you how to host a successful MEP. Now for those of you who don't know, MEP means multi-editors project. So it's one song edited by like a fair few editors, and it all collaborates in the end to create one big video. Step 1 is to pick your song. This is probably the most important step because it's going to judge whether people will actually join your MEP or not. Get it to suit what you're editing for. If your show you've picked is just any animes, then you can pretty much do whatever you want because there'll be at least one anime that will fit that song. But if you're doing something, say Avatar, you can't pick like a clubby remix like, oh, in this club tonight gonna grind on a girl, because that doesn't really suit the show at all. So know what you're editing for, and if you feel like it fits, then it fits. Now, the more popular the song is, the more chance you'll get of people actually joining, because, you know, they'll want to edit to that song. However, you have to remember that the more popular a song is, the more heavily it will be copyrighted, and you don't want your MEP blocked. So when you upload your audition video, if the MEP is blocked in some countries, then take it down straight away, pitch the song so it's higher or lower, at least by one, shouldn't matter, and then upload it again, and you should be fine, because you don't want people losing their accounts over your MEP, you know? Step 2, putting the song into your program. Now, you'll have the song on a track, and then you'll go through it and you'll cut it up where you see fit. I usually do about 15 to 20 seconds for each part, but I do give it some leeway because you don't want to cut right in between a word. I try not to cut in between a whole line of a song. So I wait until they finish that line of the song and then I cut it. Also, try and make the parts equal. I mean, you don't want someone to get a 30-second part and someone else to get a 10-second part. It's not fair on either of the editors. Step 3, add your part numbers. Of course, you need these part numbers on each part so that people actually know what one they're signing up for. Once you put these part numbers in, you can't change them, because like it'll be a bit rude if someone signs up for part 4 and they end up getting part 3, you know? Also, at this point you can add any other decorative features like a nice overlay or something. You don't want just a black and white video, so add in like maybe a picture so people know what it's about or something like that. Just whatever you want. It depends how much time you have. Part 4, render your video. Render each part by selecting the loop region, and always select just over, like a second over when you've cut off the part, because that way it'll make things much easier to flow later on when you're joining all the works up. Some people over edit anyway, but some people don't, so it's just a good idea to make it just a tiny bit longer, and then you can always cut it off or leave it later. So you select the loop region, and then you click File, Render, and then make sure it's Render Loop Region only, and then you go save as an MP3 file. I always save them in their own folder called Audio, or whatever I call them, and I'll call them Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, that way I know everything's alright. And then of course you render the whole video and then upload it to YouTube. So Part 5, uploading to YouTube. First step is create your rules. Now, they can be different for everyone, you know? You're not going to have the same rules every time, but there's just a guide to let you think about what you want in your video. So your rules should include, do you want voiceovers? You may want voiceovers, you may not want voiceovers. They're a little bit of a hassle. I can explain to you more about them later, but you can decide only you want voiceovers in the instrumental parts so you can actually hear the lyrics, you know. It's your call. So you've got to make sure you include that, else people just do what they want. You got to include what footage you want, whether you have a theme for the footage, so only couples or only one character or only one episode or one show per person. It's up to you. Obviously, the more leeway they have with the theme, the more chance there are of going to be clips that are repeated, but you can always ask them to redo that, that's fine. Whether you want watermarks or not, and if you want specific watermarks. So you might want to do them all yourself at the end of the video, or you might want them to do their own one, or you might only want black and white watermarks that are quite small, because some people have like these giant pink things in the middle of the screen and it's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Whether or not you want a particular color scheme, you want a lot of red in the parts, or you want not too bright, or you want really happy bright parts, your call for that one as well. Or you might want them not to have any coloring and you do it to the whole video at the end. You should also include what they should do when they finish their parts, whether you want them to upload it to a certain file sharing site, whether you want them to upload it to YouTube and make it a video response, or whether you want them not to upload it at all. Make sure in the description of the video you also include a list of the parts, and make sure that they're always updated. So part 1 is this person, part 2 is this person. You should decide to make sure that everyone knows who has them, or what's taken and what's reserved. Now reserved parts you can do if you've got a certain group of friends on YouTube who you really want in the MEP. I do it because my MEPs fill up so quickly. I don't want my good friends to miss out. So you can have a list of reserve parts, and then you send those people a message and you say, hey, I've got a reserve part for you if you want it, and then they can either pick it or not. But that's always your call. Some people don't like having them because people do miss out, but it's up to the host really. Make sure there's backups. If people still want to be in your MEP after all the parts are filled, ask them if they want to be a backup, and then that way if people drop out of your MEP later, or someone they just can't do their part in time, then you can replace them with someone who wanted to be in it from the beginning, so a backup person. Part 6, sending a message to everyone. Only do it once all the parts are filled, because you know, what if the MEP falls through or something happens, I don't know. Just do it once everything's done, then you can send a message to everyone so no one feels like they're being targeted for something. And the first thing to do is to include all your hopes for the MEP and how strict you're going to be with it. I like to be quite scary when I send them out, to be honest, because I find like the more people fear you, the more they'll get them in on time. You know, that's your decision whether you want to be a nice person or not. Just say like, welcome to the MEP. People like to feel like it's going to be a bit of fun. They don't want to feel like it's a chore for them. You also need to include a deadline. I often forget this and have to send out another message, but it's very important. People like to know when they've got to get things in by, especially if you're constantly saying don't miss the deadline. So usually make the deadline 2 weeks after you send the message out. That should be plenty of time. Someone will surely have an hour or two to sit down at a computer at some point in 2 weeks, unless something dramatic has happened in their lives. Again, also only make deadlines once all your parts are full, because it's really awkward when you see people have deadlines and then the parts aren't even full and the deadline's passed, and it's like, oh, that's awkward for you. Again, in the message, include all the parts that have been taken and who has what part. That way people don't get confused or have to look all the way back at the other video just to check that. Also, send them their audio files underneath their parts. So you'll have like part 1, MissDoonaQueen, and then the audio file is just under my name and then a space to part 2, because that way I can't get confused about which part I have to take. I see a lot of people and they send in, here's the whole, like they're too lazy to copy and paste a lot of parts unless they have like no time at all, but they send in a file group and they say just click on that and then find your part and then pick it, because I've done that before and I forgot which part I was because they didn't include my list of parts, and I took the wrong part and I edited and finished and pretty much stole someone else's part. So it's not fair on the other person, but it's not fair on the person who also got confused because of your laziness. So make sure everything's very thorough and then they can't get confused. You can't go wrong. Remind them again to check the rules and make sure that they know what they're doing with the part at the end, and make sure that they check if it's like an avatar video and there's no theme, they better check the video responses before they start editing their part to make sure they're not going to repeat any clips, and then ask them to check the video responses before they upload their part to make sure no one sneakily uploaded it while they were editing, because it's just a hassle once you upload it to have to redo it again. But it has to happen, else you're going to have a really repetitive and boring MEP. Lastly, there's like an attachment section where you can include a video that you've uploaded, include your audition video, and that way they have access to it really easily. They don't have to search for it, and they can check the rules whenever they want. Rule number 7, as people finish their parts, make sure you update your audition video with finished or some other symbolic symbol thing to indicate that their part's done, so that it's just like to keep you in check. It's also to keep other people in check, to know who they're waiting on and stuff like that. Keep the parts people send you organized on your computer, because you don't want them all over the place. I have a select folder for all the parts, and I put them all in there, and I rename each part 1, part 2, part 3, so that I don't get confused, and it's just a whole lot easier when you're putting everything together. Rule 8, send out reminders. A lot of people don't do it, and the deadline goes past and they're like, oh, why haven't people finished their parts? And it's like, well, people forget. It does happen. Things easily get lost on their computer, and then they just forget about the whole thing. So what I do is I send out a message to all the people who haven't finished their parts a week before, and then 3 days before, and then 1 day before. And if they haven't replied to any of those messages, I replace them, because it's just annoying when someone's inactive and you're trying to get this thing finished and it's up for ages. Number 9, putting everything into the project. So there should be 4 tracks on your project. The beginning is your watermark. So if people have forgotten to put in their watermark, or if you're going to be doing it all for them, you need a track there for that. Then you need their parts, like their videos, then their audio that came with the video, but that will be muted, and then the video underneath, which will be, the audio underneath, which will be your original audio from the audition video. So the reason you're going to mute the audio they send you is because that way, when all the parts are together, someone hasn't got high volume and then low volume and it's all over the place. It just sounds crappy, and sometimes there's spaces, and it's really embarrassing to watch when it's all jumpy and shit. So the reason you've got your audio is because it's all going to be the same volume, and then you're going to use their audio to line up with yours, and that way things won't be out of sync either. Rule number 10, if you've allowed voiceovers for your MEP, you should ask the editor to send them their voiceovers in one whole MP3 file, and that way you can adjust it yourself. And often people find it hard to make their voiceovers at an audible level for everybody. So you can be in charge of that, and you can make them louder if need be. And that way things won't get lost or incomprehensible. If it's too much of a hassle to ask them to send you their voiceovers, if you have the footage yourself, like say it's Avatar, and you know that where that quote is from, you can just get it yourself and put it in. I've done that on several MEPs where I wanted voiceovers, and you just put it in yourself and no one will notice the difference. Rule number 11 is joining effects. You want the entire MEP to flow well, and that's what mine are known for. What I do is, because I have a second overlap, that will create a nice space for a transition, and whether it's a fade or a sudden zoom or a flash, it will join the parts really quickly if it's on the beat, and it works well like that. So that's something you can do. I also do effects like colouring to the whole video, but I do it in separate parts to make sure things aren't too dark, stuff like that. It's usually just a very subtle colouring that we'll use to tie in the whole video nicely, but not overpower anything or not conflict with other people's colourings. And then part 12 is you're done. Render the whole video, upload it to YouTube, and again just make sure you list all the parts and people who edited which part, so that people can people are credited for their work. I like to also include a URL to that person's channel, and I include the time that they started their part, so that if someone's watching the video and they're like, oh, I like that part, oh, it's not watermarked, whose part was it. They can look at the time, or if they just want to watch their friend's part in that MEP, they can click on that time that you've included and it'll take them straight to the part that they want to see. So yeah, that's really all it is, guys. It's not hard to host an MEP, but you have to be very organized and use your brain. So yeah, I think you should all give it a go and take note of the rules I've included, and I say good luck to you, and I look forward to seeing some kick-ass MEPs in the future. Bye guys!